government has been able to intervene in our tendency to break off into groups, which the internet has enabled us to do massively. How do we try to encourage those groups back together again?
So in other words, people would argue, I would imagine, to the panel, that the way that these develop actually are still an extension of the culture that you're in. You know, because people say that maybe in terms of the UK, people do operate in cultural cliques, possibly, and then that's reflected on the internet to some degree. But
I think James is referring to some research that Dana Boyd brought out a couple of days ago, which Dana Boyd's a sociologist who looks at these things, and she pointed out that the vast majority of Facebook users are college-educated white, and the vast majority of MySpace users, this is in North America, the vast majority of MySpace users are black or Latino, and virtually, it's like 5% white on MySpace now, because it seems that the two communities have diverged in some way. And I think you're entirely right. These online social networks, they're not things, they're just tools that enable you to communicate with and talk with your existing social network. And if your existing social network is of a certain locality or a certain colour or a certain sexuality or a certain interest, whether it's techies or cricket lovers or stamp collectors, that'll be reflected in your usage of online social networks. There's nothing special about the internet in that way. It doesn't, it doesn't sprinkle its magical internet pixie dust on it and create these communities. It just facilitates communication between groups that would have existed if they lived in the same street. So I think it's very difficult, it's very dangerous to start talking about sort of almost socially engineering the internet and sort of forcing people who wouldn't get together in real life together online, because it's entirely artificial. Because all these tools do is just reflect what's happening in society in general.
But don't you think there's still... Sorry, James?
Very briefly. I think at some point, people could be saying it's very artificial for me to be playing in the same playground as black people. I know that may be taking it far to the extreme, but I think to a smaller degree, I shouldn't... Somebody intervened at some point and said people should be mixing and experiencing people. I may not have, I may not be playing with people that I didn't want to associate with, but I could see that they were there. When I'm on Facebook, I cannot see at all people in other groups. And I agree with you. I can't think of a way of fixing that, or if we want to, but I think it's something that should be thought of at least.
But isn't there an innate assumption that, because remember that you said it's very, very new? Because I know there's loads of people that come to me to find ways of making their blogs more accessible, and they do want to connect. And a lot of the time when you do connect, then they go off and they create an even bigger idea, because it does still seem that there are pockets of communication that don't overlap and would benefit if they did connect. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but that's an impression that seems to be out there, that it's still very new for a lot of people, it's developed for others, and there's still a sea of indecision in the middle.
And also, there's an awful lot of stuff out there as well. I mean, the internet is huge, as we know, and what sometimes we forget about as well is that there's a lot of the internet that we don't actually even see. I mean, Google, for example, most people use Google to search, especially in the UK, but actually Google is just a representation of the internet. It's not actually, they choose what they want to show in those search results. It's not actually about, there's a whole wealth of stuff out there that actually you'd never find by searching through Google. So I think, we are seeing an infancy, but it will, there's a lot more niche areas coming up and a lot more niche communities that are springing up on the internet, because that's an ideal place for them. There will be naturally some crossover between them, but it is early stages, like you said, and that's about sort of building the communities to interlink with each other.
I just want to add to our discussion not only the examples we are currently talking about, including this ghettoization example you've been raising right now, with kindergartens or the communities which just interact with each other. I think it's also the question not only of social networks. I think that's a question of additional information. That's why for us, for example, the most interesting stuff is that additional information comes up through the commenting, for example, to the hard news, And social networks, certainly that's a very interesting topic, but I want to add these new platforms as a source of information, as a source of participatory use of their content. Then your reader adds the information. And being original on website, portal, whatever, we are really very much focused on this approach. Then the witnesses of events put the additional information. Then the people who are involved in the processes has a chance to plug in the video replies or the photos. I strongly think that the social networks is probably something we are witnessing right now, then the technologies are developing, and we certainly would have more dynamics here, but we are, I think, adding a different type of the sharing of materials, and that's particularly challenging for the media, because we need to verify these facts. That is an important issue as well, and there is less debate on how we give to our readers chance to witness and to report about things we witnessed about, not for their network of 200 people or 200,000 people, but to a bigger audience of those who just read about the event, the hype news stories. And if I may, I will just give an example. Recently we published a short story about the man who was killed in the street in Dagestan, in Makhachkala. And after a while we got a comment from a woman who was saying, yes, in the high news, the officials from the police are announcing that this is a rebel, but in reality it is not. And that's the man who was going in this particular moment to the marriage with me. And she's giving her story. And I think that's not about the content which would be shared in a social network. That's about the content we need as a journalist to go and investigate. And if it is true, we need to do the stories like that. And that's a different debate, and debate about the inclusiveness or within the networks. That's about the particular people who would never be in use, who would never contribute there if they would not come up by their own.
So thank you for your patience, your time and your comments. And I'd like to hand over to Milica now just to wind up the event.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to thank Joy, who's been the brain behind this discussion. This all has been filmed, and you will be able to watch on our new portal and contribute those who were too shy or didn't have time to contribute your thoughts, so you can do it through the website. Thank you, thanks to our speakers. I'm really sorry Harry had so many to contribute. I also want to tell you that we are celebrating many things tonight, but we also want to mark that from today on, Media Diversity Institute wants to be more actually significantly present here in Britain, because we believe that we have a lot to contribute to this debate which is going on about and around multiculturalism, and now more and more used word interculturalism. And as the last thing, I want to thank my team, Martina, Malus over there, Chris, Pierre, Lydia, who made this event, Lydia, you are there, this event possible, and in particular is someone who was talking and was not seen, and you might thought that this was some little green man talking from a website. Farid Littleproud, who actually has worked on this website, and I hope it will be useful. So Farid is up there. Thank you very much, Farid. And for the very end, we have Lydia try to teach me the word. We have drinks and cannabis, which are not compulsory, but complementary, but they can be compulsory as well. So we also have a bit of wonderful live music, so please join us for a little celebration. Thank you for being patient, thank you for contributing, and hope to see you again.